Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about resolution and image size and how that differs from file size and all those really boring things. No, it's super exciting because we're going to use an actual picture. Like for example, this picture here, it's my dog Otto, my former dog Otto, who obviously loves the water. This image is about 3.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches tall, and was 300 pixels per inch when I printed that file. All right, that was the resolution, 3.5 by 3.5 inches at 300 pixels per inch. Okay, so where do you find that in Photoshop? Because with your first project, I'm giving you a starting point, which is 16 by 9 at 300 ppi, like the document you see on the screen. So let's jump to that and check out where that is in Photoshop. Okay, so if I go to image size, you will see this has already been set to the correct size and resolution. Okay, so these dimensions here, that is our image size, 4800 pixels by 2700 pixels. That is literally means it's, if I counted the pixels from left to right on this document, like I just literally counted them all, I would count 4,800 pixels for the width and 2,700 pixels for the height. All right, that is not the resolution. Resolution is when that number, the space of those pixels is given across a specific unit, as in inches or centimeters. So here, down here, is the resolution. It's 16 by 9 inches at 300 ppi. So I'm going to zoom back out of this picture here because you can see it a little bit better. So how do these numbers work in this dialog box? And how did I get these numbers? Well, first of all, what you should note is that by default, this resample box is usually checked. And if I was to change the width, like let's say I didn't need this to be so large, if I wanted to print it out smaller, like I wanted to print out half the size, so the width, like I want to print on 8 by 10. And so the height falls to 4.5 because these things are locked together. This aspect ratio is locked together. If I have this resample box checked, this stays at 300 ppi, and my file size, my image size drops from 37 to 9.27 because I'm tossing out a bunch of pixels. These are my new pixel dimensions. They're smaller. Now I'm going to hold down Option and click this Reset button. See, when I hold down Option, that clicks Reset. Let's say I didn't have this resample box checked, which means it won't change the pixels at all. It'll keep the exact same number of pixels, 4800 by 2700. This number will remain consistent at this point. And let's do the same thing. Let's say, 8. I'm cutting this in half. But look what happened to my resolution. It doubled. Because I cut the size on paper in half, the resolution doubled because what it did, it literally took the number of pixels. I'm going to put so it took the number of pixels and reduced the size, the width and height, and that was able to compress the pixels more. But the same number of actual pixels stays the same throughout the entire document. It's just that they're compressed into a smaller space. So that is what happened there. And that means my document, like I said, the actual dimensions, 4800 by 2700 pixels, stays exactly the same. I'm not losing any data with this at all. Okay, so that is how these things are all linked together. Where I have my image dimensions, also called my image size, and here are my resolution, which are these numbers. But this little box is super important. As you'll see, we're going to actually start with my original document that I used before I made this. So here I have my original picture where I'm standing on the skate ramp out in the backyard. And if I go to my image size, and these are all going to vary, your basic starting points are going to vary based on what you're taking your pictures with. Like for example, you might know the term megapixels, like a camera will have the term megapixels. Well, if I have 2,000 pixels one direction and 3,000 the others, that's 6 million pixels, which is 6 megapixels. That's all they do to determine that number when they tell you the resolution, or not the resolution, but the quality of your image, the dimensions of your image. Okay, in this case, my camera, my digital SLR, took this picture, and this resolution didn't mean anything to my digital camera. It's just the number. It had to put it into a certain width and height and resolution, but it's these numbers that are important. Actual file dimensions, the size dimensions, width and height in pixels, because that determines your quality. These numbers I can change all around, and again, I can uncheck this resample just to play with this. So for example, let's do 16. That gives me the width of 16 and a height of 10 and a resolution of 189. Well, these aren't the numbers we need, right? We need 16 by 9 at 300 ppi. Well, I can tell right away that I'm going to have to upsample. It's going to have to add some pixels for me because there's not enough pixels in here to get this up to 300 ppi. So Photoshop's going to have to do some interpolating for me and add some. Ideally, I don't want that to happen, but you guys aren't going to have like super great cameras. Well, some of you might have better cameras than I do. It's true. But some of you will have lower numbers than this if you're using like your phone or something like that. Okay, so also, if you just go and put 9 in here, well, then this number is going to change to 13.15. These are locked. The aspect ratio is locked. So you can unlock this. You can click resample, and you can unlock these numbers, and then you can put in whatever numbers you want. But be very careful, because it is going to change your aspect ratio. So if I click OK, you can tell I got a little wider there. Maybe you can't tell, but I did get wider. The skate ramp got longer because my width increased more than my height increased, because I told it to do that. I unlocked those boxes. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to hit Command Z and undo it. Now I'm back to my normal self. So you have to be very careful with that. So you can, if those changes are not problematic for you, you can just go to the image size and make sure this little resample box is checked and put in the target numbers: 16 by 9, 300. All right, this will have to be unlocked for this aspect ratio to change. And then if you're totally fine with the way it looks, that's great. I'm going to end up being a hawk anyway. This might not be a big deal. It's not a huge change. The skate ramp just looks a little bit longer, and if I had more room in the backyard to build a longer skate ramp, I would have. But I'm going to also show you an alternate way to do this in case you don't want to mess up the aspect ratio. Another way to do this is let's just go straight to the crop tool. So we have a crop tool right here, and this crop tool allows us to put in very specific numbers. I'm going to click clear for a minute here. We can go to width by height by resolution and literally put in 16 tab 9 tab 300. And it'll give you the correct aspect ratio. And what this does when I change this cropping tool is whatever ends up inside of this cropping tool is going to be 300 ppi at 16 by 9. I'm going to try to use as much of this as I can. And in fact, I could even make this bigger, by the way. I'm going to drop a picture in back here anyway. So if the skate ramp comes to a stop, that's totally fine. So I could crop it down to the actual document anywhere I want. I'm actually going to make it bigger because, like I said, this skate ramp's coming to an end right here at the corner of the picture, so it looks like it's going out the frame. And this background is going to be erased by a different background anyway. I'm going to erase all these trees. All this is going to be clean and clear, and it's going to show the picture that I'm going to drop behind it in there. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit return. Oopsie, guess what I did? If you get this, it's because I didn't pay attention to my units, and I put pixels in here. I have this reset for my web design class, and I had forgotten. So I'm going to undo that, and real quickly, we will set the right So I'm gonna have to type in inches here. Yours will probably be set to inches already, unless you're in my web design class. All right, that's much better. Okay, we'll do this. Hit return. There we go. Now I can double check this and go to my image size and see what happened. So it's 16 by 9 by 300. All right, so I was able to do that with the crop tool, just width, height, and resolution. Okay, so at this point, I could go ahead and start, masking all this out. Like, what I could do is go to my layers, double click this and call this ramp. And I'm going to add another blank layer under it just so you can see the transparency grid for sure. And then I could add a layer mask, and I could take my Wacom tablet and I could start masking this out. I would probably start by just filling in a bunch with black, but all this is going to be gone. The hard part to do this final piece was all this stuff here, to do these lines. So I actually did make a selection and fill it with black. Like I came across these guys, and if you hold down the Option key as you're drawing, it lets you do straight lines like this. It gives you the straight line lasso, and then I can just click as I'm holding down the Option key to go through parts like this, which will make it much, much easier. The hardest part was getting all the, and then come back to my beginning points, and then just say like edit fill, and just fill it with black. As long as I have black as my mask color, I'm set, and I'll mask that stuff out. So I'm not going to do this whole thing for this demo, but that's basically what I did. I did the whole thing here. If I want to make it easier and use less keyboard commands, I could just go to my polygonal lasso tool. That's what I'm using right there, and then just click around, and it makes it super easy, and then fill with black. All right, but let me show you then. At this point, I was able to jump to some of my other files, like this Torque Mountain, and I just did select all, and then copied it, which is edit, Command C, and then jump back here, back to this one, and said paste, and made sure it was in the layer below. Now, of course, I never finished masking this because that was a tedious process. I just wanted to give you an overview. And then I can go to my layer 2, which is Ireland, and do Command T, and then blow this thing up so it fits in here. It would fit in here. I just didn't do that bottom corner just yet. And then if I'd like to reveal to that, now when I go and I mask, I can start to see that. And when I'm done, I'll have a skate ramp in Ireland, which would be awesome. And then I can even take this background because it's super long and move it through however I want to. I want to end it up with that lake back there in the corner. Quinn's going to be right here. I started with a little sketch, by the way, to make things easier. After I cut down my first initial piece, I looked at some of the other photographs I had, and I actually literally drew another layer and called it sketch. And I made notes to myself, and I do this a lot. I took my pencil, and I took a black brush, and I started drawing. Let's do a little bit bigger of a brush. I started drawing Quinn in here. Yeah! The skateboard. He's got his tongue out. And that's how I put everything together. He's got his helmet on. I made a note that a new symbol on his helmet. That's his new symbol. I know you can't read my writing. All right, but it's handy to start out with a sketch sometimes. And then I was going to have a hawk head, so I did that. Just let me know what pieces I needed. And then later I just dumped that whole thing as I added the elements. Okay, that's all you need to know about size and resolution. Just I'll leave you with that. Image size box, just to remind you that your document should be 16 by 9 by 300 pixels per inch. All right, thank you.